We will open this special meeting. The topic for today is our audit results. So with that, I'll turn it over.
So would you like me to do introductions for our side first?
Please.
So obviously Chairman Smoker just did the introductions. He's one of our board members. We have Commissioner Flath, another one of our board members here, and Chief Gatterman, who you've been working with, Chief Frater, who will take over for Chief Gatterman in a few months. Myself, Chief Waller, Deputy Chief Osborne is also here, and our one of our specialists, office specialists, is here taking notes, Christine Heike.
Good.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I think I'll do introductions for SAO if that works. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christina Baylor. I serve as the audit manager for one of our local offices. Out of the office, we have regional offices around the state, and I manage the office closest to Fire 4, based in Mill Creek, Washington. I've had the opportunity to work with the district for many years, so it's always a pleasure to return and see how you're doing. Joining me today, I am joined by two of my staff that worked very closely during the course of the audit. So Amanda Robinson is joining us. She served as the assistant audit manager over the district's audit, which really involved supervising all of the work that went into the audit, as well as assisting with several of the discussions that were held throughout. And also a familiar face that it sounds like to you is Michelle Milso. Michelle was our lead auditor over the district's engagement, and he really did all of the legwork that went into planning, conducting, and ultimately wrapping up this most recent audit. So we do have a presentation planned for you today, and we are going to take a moment to make sure that we can share our screen and everyone can see that. Amanda's going to bring that up. And while she's doing that, please note that we did also send out a packet of information prior to today's meeting that contains copies of our draft audit reports as well. And so we will be sharing a summary of that packet of information on the screen today rather than the packet itself. If you've been around the district for a number of years, which I know many of you have, you might recall when we used to hold these meetings in person and would go through paper documents. Those documents are still really important. They do contain draft copies of the audit reports, which will eventually be published on our website, but they don't lend themselves very well to this virtual format. So we do have a summary of that information for you today in PowerPoint form. We'll walk through the results today, and we will also reference a few key page numbers from that packet if you happen to have that handy. And if not, no worries, we will make sure to send that out again if you haven't already received it. With that, we'll go ahead and jump right in. So before we go to the specific results of the district's audit, we like to take a moment to talk about the audit process in general. So the audit is really something that we consider to be a tool to our local governments, both members of the governing body and management, that really is designed to help with a number of areas. The first objective that we hope an audit brings is it helps increase trust in government operations. So for you as members of the governing body and as management, what an audit can do for you is let you know if things are working as you intended them to work, whether those policies and procedures that you've adopted are being followed and adhered to, whether they're in compliance with state laws and regulations, or whether there's any areas that the district could benefit from some improvements or maybe taking another look at. Another goal of the audit is to really build that trust in the community, and we do that by conducting independent, transparent audits. So the Office of the State Auditor is separately elected. We do audits of all state and local governments throughout our state of Washington, and we publish those results directly on our website. So those results can be read by both stakeholders, which could include bond rating agencies or other stakeholders that might be interested in how the district is doing, as well as your own citizens. And they can take a look at how their taxpayer money is being spent and whether it's being adequately safeguarded. But we do recognize that audits might have recommendations that come out of them. So whether your audit has a recommendation or not, we just like to take a moment to share with you that really we take those items very seriously. And anytime those recommendations come up, our goal is to help improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the district's operations. And so as we move through today's materials, please let us know if you have any questions at all, and we'd be happy to answer those. We will also reserve some time at the end of our presentation to go over additional questions as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, and he's going to walk you through the accountability audit results. Michelle?
Thank you, Christina. During the course of the audit this year, we perform an accountability audit. And the purpose of an accountability audit is to making sure that if the district operation complies with all the applicable state law regulations, the district own policy, or if in addition to that, the district actually provided adequate control over the safeguarding of those resources. And as you can see, for the audit packet that we provided you for your reference on page 7, you will see that under the heading Results in Brief, that we, in all of this area that we selected in terms of the audit result, the district indeed comply with all the state law regulation, its own policy. And also the district has really adequate control over the safeguarding of those public resources. So great job on that. Okay, so what we did, we conducted a series of planning procedures by reviewing the minute, having some meeting with not only the chief, but some of the board members, and then be able to look at some of the trend analysis that the district has. And using a risk-based approach, we were able to select those areas for the audit period. While we are really ready to discuss every area that we selected for the audit, we are going to select a few of them for the discussion here and presentation, and highlight those areas to elaborate more on them. The first area that we selected is payroll. And with the payroll, what we did, we actually looked at the type of control that the district has in place to elaborate, to see the different policy that the district had in regard to payroll, cash receipting, and cash buyout and such. And we are able to select a few of those transactions and ensure that those overtime payout were in accordance with the district policy. Okay. The second, can you please next slide? And as I mentioned, that in that area, we were able to have a good control there. The second area that we selected was the procurement. And in procurement, we actually follow up on the management letter that the district received a couple years ago. And we wanted to make sure that in regard to that management letter that the district received, what are the different internal control that the district put in place to ensure that those are controls designed to safeguard the public resources that the district has. In order to confirm that, we selected some of the procurement transactions and making sure that they were in compliance with the district, not only policy, but state law when it comes to bid requirement. And we were pleased with our determination in that specific area that the district did actually comply with not only its own policy, but the state bid requirement. And the final area that we looked at was the financial conditions. We are required by state law by looking at the district financial condition every year. And basically by looking at some financial ratio and making sure that the district, those financial ratio are within the guidelines that we established. And the key highlight on the different key financial ratio that the district had here was the positive cash balance efficiency that the district has because we were looking at to stay within 60 days. And we were really excited to see that the district has over 60 days, but actually in 2020, for instance, 370 days, which is fantastic. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Amanda to share with you the result or the financial portion of the audit.
Okay, in addition to the accountability audit, we also performed a financial statement audit for the period of January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2020. The purpose of the financial statement audit is to issue a opinion on whether or not the district's financial statements are free of material misstatements, are presented fairly, and are adequately supported. And so this year we are proud to announce that we are also issuing an unmodified opinion. This is a clean opinion. It's what you want on your financial statements in relation to the BARS manual. We also will be issuing an adverse opinion on US GAAP as we have in prior years. This is just a technicality, just stating that, the district doesn't follow national US GAAP, but it follows Washington state cash basis, which is okay. The district doesn't have any debt in the future. Bonding agencies don't have any issue with that adverse opinion. Our audit is also conducted in accordance with government auditing standards. And as a part of that, we are required to look at the district's internal controls over financial statement preparation. And we are happy to announce that during our review of the financial statement controls and processes in place to prepare the financial statements, that we did not identify any significant deficiencies. We did not identify any material weaknesses, and we also did not note any instances of non-compliance we are required to report for government auditing standards. In addition to the financial statement audit, we did provide a list of some minor presentation items to the district, and we are happy to announce that there are no uncorrected misstatements at the end of the audit. And we also didn't identify any material misstatements that we're required to bring to your attention per those auditing standards. Throughout the year, even though we're not on site doing an audit or remotely doing an audit, we have 2 local government support teams that help out. The first one actually is called Local Government Support Team. They're the ones running the BARS training, updating the BARS manual, any financial help desks, and any sort of issues that you have in your portal. The second team is called the Center for Government Innovation, and they're the team that are in charge of putting together all of the resources that our office publishes and puts out, as well as providing different types of leadership and team building trainings. They also were the one to start the FIT tool a couple years ago that came out. And just piggybacking off of the Center for Government Innovation a little bit more, these are a lot of really neat guides that they publish. We have some that came out focusing on internal controls and also focusing on minimizing cybersecurity risks. And one of the ones I really want to point out here is the segregation of duties guide. A lot of times we come in and we're like, you need to have a better segregation of duties. But what this guide really did was it kind of tells you how. It tells you if you have 3 staff in a payroll department, what type of controls you need to make sure that those payments to employees and other sort of payroll transactions are adequately supported and have adequate segregation of duties. So a lot of these guides are really helpful. It puts a lot of information into an understandable format. And so we really encourage you to take a look at any of those guides, or if you have any questions on any of them, please let us know and we'll be happy to share them with you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christina for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Amanda. So as part of wrapping up our presentation today, we do like to revisit some items that were shared at the start of our engagement, as well as some next steps. So at the beginning of our engagement, we did provide an estimate of the audit cost for our audit. We are proud to share with you today that everything was on track. There was no need to revise our original estimate, so that was great to see. We did want to touch briefly on the future audit cycles of the district, as Snohomish and the surrounding area is a growing area. We've seen that the district is starting to grow in size in terms of annual revenues. By our internal policy, we do have a policy that sets the audit frequency for all of our local governments across the state. And when we see a government that starts to be consistently over $10 million in annual revenues, we do require that they move to an annual cycle. So looking at the last couple of years, the district has reported over $10 million beginning in 2020. That was the first year. And at this point, it looks to be that it will continue in that way. Because of that threshold being surpassed, we are recommending that we move the district to an annual cycle starting with this next fiscal year. So that would be the fiscal year 2021, and your first audit would be due later this year, so in the fall, winter time. If there's any questions on that, we would be more than happy to discuss them with you, but we did want to bring that to your attention since it looks like the district's getting a little bit larger than it has been in the past. Is there any questions on that item?
No.
None from me.
All right. Well, perfect. Well, we'll continue on then and go into the next steps. So next steps will be to issue the district's report. And Amanda, if you want to move to the next slide, that'd be great. And we will work on publishing the district's report. I think right now we are expecting the report to be released on Monday, so February 7th. So both reports will be published on Monday. If you have not already signed up, you can receive automatic notifications on when your district's report is released. We've included the link on the slide, but it is also in your packet. That will allow you to get a notification of when your district's report publishes to our website, but you can also use it for other local governments. So if you're interested in seeing another fire district's reports that come out or another local government, you can sign up for notifications of that as well. Once the District's 2 reports are released, we will also be sending out a link to a customer service survey. We encourage any and all feedback that the district might have and that you would be willing to share with us on the audit process. And that link is not a one-time link. You can also share it with others. So feel free to forward that on to anyone else that participated in the audit process. As I mentioned, all feedback is good feedback. And so we really enjoy receiving that and continuing to improve our process. And then from there, we would like to take a pause here. We couldn't complete this audit without really extending our appreciation for working with all of your staff so closely. And it really wouldn't be fair of me to take this slide. So I'm going to let Michelle jump back in here because I know he works so closely with all of you.
Thank you, Christina. As you know, this year, it was my first year working with the district. I really wanted to take the opportunity and extend my thanks to the entire district personnel, but especially with Chief Water, but more importantly with Chief Gutterman, that we were really working hand on hand, and Chief Gutterman was have a constant communication, really understandable, and the more fantastic adjective that I can describe my collaboration with Chief Gutterman, with the patience that he has with me, with constant follow-up and be able to, that flexibility that he'll be able to get back to me on the documents requested around. Really professional manner of, communicating with me and be able to, have a constant communication going. With that, I really wanted to say thank you, Chief. And I know you're going to be leaving soon, but it was a pleasure. And I'm really did enjoy my time with you. So.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, well, with that, that concludes the presentation we have for you today. We'd like to open up for any last questions from the district or any comments that you would like to share with us.
I would just like to echo the thank you to Michelle and all of the state auditor for making this smooth and helpful. And also, I would also like to thank Chief Gatterman for putting so much effort in not only completing the audit, but it was a lot of his work that made sure that we had, I forget your wording, the untarnished recommendation or I forget what you say, but having a clean bill of health was really because of his work the last 2 years, not just during the audit. So thank you.
So I would also, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jim.
Go ahead. Oh, I would also echo the chief's comments, and I know an audit is in a certain sense disruptive, but I believe and support the process and appreciate the outside look at our operations. And of course, it's always nice when we come up with not having done anything wrong. So that's even better. So going to an annual audit, my question there is, does that change the type of audit or the extent of the audit because it's done once a year, or is it just now we just do the same thing twice a year or once a year?
So under our policy, both audits would move to an annual cycle, but we are willing to work with the district in that regard. We can consider just doing one portion of the audit annually and the other on a 2-year basis. That's something that we can consider if that's of interest to you. But technically speaking, we need to do both, but there is a little bit wiggle room if we're at least doing one of them.
Okay. All right.
And I should also share with you that we have provided an estimate of what that would cost for both. So of course, the annual portion is less than a 2-year portion, but just know that it'll be something that will occur each year instead of every 2 years.
Sure. Does that make the audit easier though? I mean, even if we do the same type of audit every year, does it make it easier doing it once a year because there's not so much to look at?
Yeah, it does. And it's a lot easier. What we hear most often from clients, it's a lot easier to recall 1 year ago than 2 years ago. So,
yes.
so we have clients that aren't even over the $10 million threshold that prefer to stay annual because it's just too hard to remember that far back.
Okay. Excellent. Well, again, I appreciate all your efforts and all the efforts of our staff. And again, I would echo Michelle's comments about Chief Gatterman. Over the years, he's always done a great job with all our stuff and always worked really well with the auditor's office. And so I appreciate him also, plus the rest of the staff, of course.
Sure.
And that's it for me.
Are you going to, this is Commissioner Flath. I'm wondering if you're going to say anything about your exit recommendations?
We certainly can. Those were shared with management, and which is our typical process. Exit recommendations we liken to housekeeping items. They're very small in nature, and so typically management is best to address them. But we are very much happy to share those with you today. Michelle or Amanda, would you like to go through those items? Oh, Michelle, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Amanda, would you like to share your screen, or I can go? We did have a couple exit items. The first one was in regard to the pub. Okay, there you go. On the accountability, we actually have one in regard to the credit card policy, where we actually gave some additional, control that the district can have to be able to strengthen the control that the district had in place. And like Christina said, the district has adequate control in place, but we always wanted to bring our, the best practice that we provide and be able to follow up on the guidance that our office provide, to local government in regard to those areas. And in regard to the policy, is just that those additional control, like I mentioned, some feature, for instance, that credit card provider have, such as block the cash advance capability on the card, making sure that the flag high risk emission, categories and things like that, or impose some limit on some of the credit card transactions, right? And again, like I said, those are best practices that we are, share with our clients so that they can not only make it, strengthen the already good control that they have. The other thing that in the regard to that area is making sure that one of the key policy, in regard to, for instance, missing receipt or documentation. And what we've been seeing is, even though the district didn't, have such issue during our work, but we wanted to make sure that the district has at least the process that they have in place documented. So therefore, personnel is aware of, the specific, process that has to be taken place when something like that occur in the future. Okay. The other thing is just that, in terms of, like I say, in terms of the process itself, there are some additional, control review that we wanted to make sure that the district put in place in regard to, in addition to the review that they already have. And that was the best practices that we have on the credit card. The other area was the executive sessions. During our review of the minute, we identify a couple instances where there was non-compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act, right? And the good news was it was in earlier 2009, and from 2009 to the current audit, all the executive session that we reviewed through the review of the minute, the district actually did comply. So, however, because it did happen within our audit period, we wanted to remind the district to keep, documented the executive session and making sure that they comply with the OPMA. Okay.
And just to clarify there, Michelle, we are not saying that this is non-compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act. What we noticed was the written minutes didn't show these actions. And so these very well could have happened in the meeting. It's just they weren't in the written minutes, so it could appear as there was non-compliance. So it's really just making sure that those items get into the written minutes so somebody reading them after the fact can show that the district followed all of the proper protocols and complied with the statute.
Thank you, Christina. Okay. Next page, please. Okay. One of the requirements that we have going forward because of the increase in cybersecurity, cyber, hacking and ransomware, basically we are required now to look at any electronic fund transfer that any local government has. And even though the district does not allow fund transfer with vendors, they did have direct deposit through with the employee. And with that, per the guidance that our audit, our office has, and along with the BAS manual requirement, there is a RCW that require the district to have a written policy in that specific area, and with the implementation of the different areas that we elaborate here. And again, this also, again, is a, even though the district has a good control in terms of, policy in terms of direct deposit, we really wanted to make sure that at least that they have that policy implemented to be able to be in compliance with that RCW. Okay. And on the financial statement area, just some, a couple classification error that the chief and I worked on that and making sure that the correction was made. And we wanted to make sure that going forward, the district actually, research and making sure that the balances when it comes to some of the restricted or ND cash and investment balances are properly classified on the financial statement. And the final one that we actually also have as a recommendation is through the review of the financial statement preparation. And again, just the documentation that a second review is performed, and we have also keep the evidence to show that those review had actually been performed. And again, those are really exit items and housekeeping items that we wanted to make sure the district have in place to strengthen the control. With that, I'm open to any question on all the recommendations that we share with you today.
Hey, Michelle, there's one more on the next
go ahead,
page. It had to do with ground emergency medical transport revenues. This is a new program that came out a couple years ago. And for this item in particular, it was just classifying the amount paid into the program. When the program refunded that, reimbursed that back to the district, that needed to be classified a different way to a different account code than the other revenues. And so just keeping, continuing to monitor the BARS manual for those type of coding and any sort of other revenue changes.
Thank you, Amanda. And with that, those were all the recommendations that we have for the district. And Christina mentioned, thank you for, usually we share that with management, and then we are really open to question or go over it if actually, there was a question in regard to those exit item recommendations. So I'm glad that the district did, and that we were able to share with you, more in more detail, the reason behind those exit recommendations.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Not a problem. Thank you so much for allowing us to, be able to go into more detail into those areas. So.
Okay. So is that the extent of the reason for our meeting? Does anybody else have any questions?
Not over here, it doesn't look like.
Okay, Chief, is there anything else we need to talk about?
Nope. That's all on
All
our
right.
agenda.
All right. Well, with that, we will adjourn this meeting. And again, I appreciate everyone's effort in this exercise and all the results. And so with that, at 15:32 hours, we'll adjourn this special meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.